Hello and welcome to the video. Slade's Merry Christmas Everybody was 1973's Christmas #1. In turn, it became Slade's biggest selling single and the fastest selling single the UK had ever seen. The single had about 500,000 pre-ordered copies and it sold a further 350,000 copies on the day it was released, December the 15th. It became their 6th #1 single on its release, and it earns Noddy Holder, singer of Slade, and Jim Lee, the bassist, about 500,000 each year when it re-enters the charts in December. Noddy Holder has called the song his pension scheme. Jim Lee has said that he remembers a song that Noddy Holder had written in 1967 but hadn't bothered to go any further with it, called Buy Me a Rocking Chair. This was when the band was still called the In-Betweens. That song helped to form the chorus of Merry Christmas Everybody, with a melody that Jim Lee came up with in the shower one day. He said he can have songs floating around in his head for 10-15 years and suddenly they'll just fall into place with something else that he's thinking of, and this was one of those instances. At the time, Buy Me a Rocking Chair was all kind of flower power because that was what was around at the time, Sgt. Pepper's by the Beatles. But they wanted to make it into a Christmas song, so they adapted it around a different theme. And one night after a night in the pub, Noddy Holder went home and finished the verses at his mum's house in Warsaw. It was Noddy Holder's first solo composition, so they took the melody of Buy Me a Rocking Chair for the chorus, and then Jim Lee added in melodies for the verses. After Noddy Holder added the lyrics, it started to come to life. He said he wanted to write something that reflected a traditional British Christmas, because at that time the economy in the UK was knackered, everybody was on strike, and he wanted something to cheer himself up, to cheer everybody else up, trying to help people think of better times to come than the situation they were in, kind of like now. Dave Hill, Slade's guitarist, said that song lifted the nation's spirits just when it needed it, took on a life of its own. The song was recorded partway through Slade's East Coast tour of the USA, in the middle of a New York heat wave at the famous record plant. The year before, Alice Cooper recorded his 1972 album School's Out. In 1973, the New York Dolls album, which fueled a lot of the punk movement, was recorded at the record plant. Aerosmith's album Get Your Wings was recorded there in 1973 as well. And then in 1975 they went back to record Toys in the Attic. Woodstock recordings were taken there, where Jimi Hendrix recorded Electric Ladyland in 1968. Kiss recorded their Dynasty album there in 1979. Then more recently, Lana Del Rey, Lady Gaga's done a couple of albums there. Audioslave recorded their first album there. Eminem, Limp Bizkit, some pretty famous studio. So Wolverhampton Slade are there, from Block Switch and Moxley and Bilston to New York City. They recorded the vocals in the stairwell to get the echo, with all these Americans walking past, middle of a heat wave, and they're singing about Christmas. The original song, Buy Me a Rocking Chair, originally being inspired by the Beatles, and then being used further on for this song. John Lennon was recording at the record plant when they were recording this. He was doing his Mind Games album in the studio next door. It's a harmonium that can be heard at the beginning of the song, along with the bass, the introduction, and it was lent to them by John Lennon. The piano that they used for the song was also used by John Lennon. He actually came into the studio one night and heard Noddy's voice and said that it was amazing, he sounded just like him. 7 years later, John Lennon was recording at the record plant again, working on the song Walking on Thin Ice on December the 8th. It was that day that he walked back to the Dakota building and was shot dead. Another 7 years later, the record plant was sold to George Martin. Paul McCartney once said that if anybody had earned the title of the fifth Beatle, it was George Martin. He worked on all of their original albums. He was a producer, an engineer, an arranger, to name a few of his skills. So it took 5 days for them to record Merry Christmas Everybody, and the band didn't like it initially and didn't want it released. So here it is. have it from Wolverhampton's own Slade.